Yo, what's up, guys? It's been a long ass time since I made videos. I've just been lazy, but I want to try and get back on my shit. Is Linux for everyone? That is the question I'm gonna tackle today. And honestly, not really. Not really. I'm gonna be honest. There's a huge push in the community to this is gonna be the year of the desktop. This is gonna be is the idea that Linux will suddenly become extremely prevailed, and so many people will start using it. There has been increases over the years. Even me, I only started using Linux a year ago, and like I'm really into it. But I think personally that you have to be a little bit autistic to actually want to like use Linux a bit. And I'm not using that insulting that. I just genuinely think I think I'm somewhere on the spectrum because it really takes a special mind to like be interested in this kind of stuff. I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes even myself, I'm just like, you know what, this shit is so like retarded. Like, why am I spending my time on this? But I enjoy programming computers, stuff like that, so I don't really mind. But some people just want stuff to work, and Linux, honestly, with me, that's been the biggest issue for me. Just stuff will stop working from an update, and it really depends on how you want to use Linux. So, for example, personally for me, how I use Linux, I just kind of use it in a general way. I don't play games anymore. I used to be like a gamer. Like, for example, okay, if you want to be a gamer, it just doesn't really work that well. Stuff will not work properly. For example, I wanted to play Elden Ring. It came out this year. And I played it on Linux, and it was just horrible. It was super laggy, would not work. I was suffering at like 20 FPS. But I just struggled through it. I'm like, oh, maybe an update will fix it or something. Nothing ever fixed it. I went on Windows, worked extremely fine. It worked perfect. And I was like, wow, I just wasted so much time playing it on Linux. I should have just played on Windows. So certain stuff will just not work. There are games that are optimized for it, but then you're going to have to limit what games you want to play. Honestly, just stop playing games. It's a waste of your time. That's probably the best solution. That's what I did. But overall, if you're a gamer, Linux is not really for you. And if we're talking about the general user, I guess it really depends. For example, how I use my the operating system I use is Arch Linux, or the distribution or whatever. That's the specific version or model or whatever you want to call it use, and I use DWM as like the how it looks. Now this is like a very nerd like it's a complete nerd setup because my setup required tons of configuration, even like tons of like adding like patches to DWM to get it to look like this. This is not for everyone. This takes hours on hours on hours to configure, and honestly there's a kind of level where it's a kind of thing where you're almost never satisfied with how you want your setup to be. So, and for example, how I use my stuff, I mostly use the terminal. And here's the thing, if you truly want to get the most out of Linux, you kind of need to use it like how I use it. I'm not saying that you have to use it how I use it, but if you want to get the most out of it, you kind of do. The great thing about Linux, and not even just specifically Linux, it's the idea that everything's free. You can customize, you can put whatever software you want, you can look into the source code, edit it, configure it. That's the ideal way, because usually I came from Windows because I was just kind of done with Windows. Windows is just annoying. I tried out, I bought a laptop, and I tried Windows 11 on that, and it was horrible because I'm like, wow, there's ads like everywhere. It's just crazy. There's no ads. If you own a computer, if you own a laptop or whatever, why should there be ads in something that you've already paid for? Especially Windows, you pay for Windows. I don't pay for Linux, and you don't have fucking ads. But the whole point is that you actually own it. Now, when you use a lot of proprietary software, which is software that you can't use the source code, or like you can't view the source code, you can't edit it directly. Usually the software you have to pay for, and you can't really like know what how the program is exactly working. The only way you can tell is just either reverse engineering the raw binary executable, which is really hard. You have to be next level autistic to be able to do that. But you know, the idea that we can just, oh, okay, you know what, I have a program, I can just go into the, let's say, like, you know, I've got a script here, oh, let me just go into, I don't know, some program, and oh, I can view literally like all the code and just like edit it, change how it works to my liking. You know, that's the great thing about Linux, in my opinion. And when you're using programs that aren't built like this, they're proprietary, then you can't really maximize it. Maybe, you know, you have different, you have like different things that you want to do and you just don't want to use Windows, you know, that's fine. There's a lot of like beginner distros such as Ubuntu, which is, you know, this, or Linux Mint. But to be honest, I can't really say too much about this stuff, because how I got into Linux is I downloaded Linux Mint on a virtual machine, and I just played around with it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm like, well, this is boring. Like, to me, this was boring because, number one, I just didn't like how it looked. You know, that's one thing that made me, like, not want to use it. I didn't like how it looked. And then, yeah, to be honest, like, it sounds stupid, but that's literally, like, the main thing. And I saw YouTubers using Arch Linux and DWM. It looked so cool, and I want to try that out. So I literally just started playing with that. I downloaded Arch Linux on a virtual machine. I downloaded KDE, which is a, I don't know how you describe it. It's a desktop manager. Desktop, window manager. It's this shit. Like, it kind of looks like I don't know, like kind of looks like Windows, you know. And this is pretty cool. But again, so I did that on a virtual machine, and I was like, you know what? I took the plunge forward, and what I did is I partitioned a disk on my drive. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna install Arch Linux on my bare computer next to Windows, and I downloaded KDE, which is you know, this, like, it's like how it looks, like that's basically it. And you know, started messing around, and then I got into all sorts of programs such as Vim. Vim is a text editor, which is like, it's basically known as the tryhard text editor because you can write text on the command line. It's not like a traditional, like, it's not like Notepad on Windows, if you know what that is, where it's like a whole, like, it's like in the terminal. I don't know how to describe it, but like, that's just basically it. You know, and you do need to be somewhere on the spectrum, again, to use that. So there's just a lot of things that I feel, so like, yeah, again, I didn't really play around that much with the newbie stuff because I downloaded KDE Plasma and I used it for maybe like a month. And then again, I'm like, you know what? I want to try DWM, which is what I use because this is the try hard, sweaty, like this is like for the nerds. And to be honest, I genuinely like this more. But again, this is aids to configure. So this whole window manager, to edit the source code, you basically go, so I've got it here, DWM. So if you want to edit how it looks, you have to go into the actual source code and then edit it. So for example, if I want to change what font I have it here to set to be the hack font at size 12. And you know, if you like show the top bar, you know, like this is actually like what it reads. There's no like nice file that has it all laid out. If you want to change the colors, you got to put in the hexadecimal. There's no simple configuration file. And it makes it a lot more simplistic in a way, but it also makes it a lot more aids and scary if you don't understand this, because this is C++, C, or just C by itself. I think this is raw C, which is a programming language. So this is very not newbie friendly. And some people, to be honest, because I've spent hours configuring my like config file and all this stuff, this is aids. It's not for everyone. I'm just happen to be, you know, I guess my brain is just built that I actually enjoy this somewhat. Even me, I kind of find it very annoying. Sometimes I just want it to work. But, you know, there's a nice feeling. It's like, because now I really like how my setup is. Like, it's just very clean, aesthetically appealing. But this is not for everyone. And I feel like if you're not using it in the way that it was intended, which is, I feel like Linux works best when you don't have these like crazy aspirations to play games. It's just you want to do, if you want to do work, such as like I'll show you example how I sometimes do work. So for example, I have you know, I'll get like a PDF of like, you know, let's say Ego is the Enemy, you know, a book that I'm reading, and then I also want to just give me a second. Okay, it's right here. I want to take notes about this book, so I'll go to, okay, always stay the student. And this is the last chapter I was reading. I read it, and I can just like on the fly edit it. You know, it's just very simplistic, and it works well. And I think this is what Linux was really like made to do. You know, made for programming, made for testing, you know, and you can do all this stuff without having some, you know, programs like spy on you and shit like that, because you can see the source code. You can tell that, okay, there's no Chinese spyware or anything like that. Obviously, there's many different ways you can use Linux, but I think it really is best used when you're using in a very hard focus, like productivity mode. Obviously, you can do other stuff, like you can go on YouTube and waste time like that. I do that as well. And it works well for that. You know, everyday browsing is completely fine. I guess, you know, I've been waffling a bit. Really, to put it into simple terms, if it's like your grandma who uses Facebook and literally only uses Google Chrome, then Linux is actually fine. Linux is fine. You don't need to download, or you don't need to buy $100 Microsoft subscription. And there's many programs such as, you know, there's LibreOffice, which is basically Microsoft Office, but like free. You know, so, you know, you got Spreadsheet, which is like Excel. And to be honest, I just have it downloaded just in case I need to use it, but I really don't use it that much. But you know, there's alternatives to a lot of the common programs. But once you start getting very specific with the programs they use, such as, you know, you really want to play a flight simulator with, you know, a million different joysticks and buttons and controls, maybe stick to Windows, because Linux is a very it's a very minor community. I think maybe 2% of computer users use Linux, less than that. And I'm talking about like home usage, not like enterprise usage. Enterprise is actually the majority, but the amount of home users that use Linux is like 1 to 2%. And obviously they're not going to cater for such a small community. So, you know, that's just how it works. And honestly, I don't know how to explain this, but there's almost like an assumption where if you're on Linux, you should kind of just expect that you're going to have to fix, like, problems are going to arise because you're in a very niche community that has very niche, you know, like very niche usage. So there's going to be problems that come up for you that you're going to have to fix yourself, because there just isn't like that much of a community, or you know, there's just unique problems that arise. For example, again, like I got this laptop, and I'm not kidding, Wi-Fi kind of barely works on it. Like it works, but it doesn't work. And I remember I brought it to school and I was showing my friends, and I was like, oh yeah, let me just, you know, there's certain problems that you have on Linux that you just will not have if you're using Windows or Mac. So it really depends. I think, to be honest, there's a huge hate on like Mac, but Mac is actually great because, you know, it works well and it looks pretty nice and it does its job well. You can't really complain. Even the prices aren't as bad as they used to be now. Obviously it is overpriced, but you know, it works very well. And if you're in that community of having an iPhone, having a MacBook, having all this, it all interconnects. It works amazingly, way better than what you can get on Windows or even Linux. So, you know, you pay for what you get. Linux is free, and you know, it can be amazing if it's specifically like tailored to how you want to use it and your usage fits into the like what you can use Linux for. But it is free. So you have to understand that, and it's maintained by random people like us. There's no like central authority. It's just, you know, there's the main guy called Linus Torvalds, who works on the kernel. But then there's also thousands of other people that work on the kernel as well and work on these programs and stuff. It's all just community run. And some problems will not get fixed easily because, again, it's made by people like us. Some problems will get fixed very easily. Like, it really depends. There's no guarantee, to put it simply. So, honestly, the best way to see, if you have an interest in computers, then I'd say definitely give Linux a try. At worst, you know, maybe you wasted some time. But I wouldn't even call it waste of time, because if you're interested in computers or programming, you'll probably be surrounded by Linux, and it's good to know how the terminal works and, you know, all these sorts of things. But I think for the average person, again, it really depends. If you only use it for, you know, browsing the internet, yeah, it's fine. Just download Linux Mint or something. Put on some. You can still like customize how like Linux Mint looks like. Like, it doesn't have to look like this if you don't like it how it looks. Like, I remember I customized my like Plasma look like pretty well. Like, it kind of looked like Mac OS. You know, this is actually a pretty good desktop manager. I really don't remember what desktop environment, that's what it's called. But again, it really depends. But for the average Joe Schmo, like, if you get into stuff like you need to use Microsoft products, then it becomes a hassle, because you can't download Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, all these programs. If you specifically need those exact programs, you can't use an alternative. Then the only way is for like a virtual machine, and that becomes very complicated, and it doesn't work extremely well. You have to have a decent computer. So, you know, it really depends. You have to evaluate it for yourself. But I'd say overall, it's not for everyone. There's a reason why Linux is only used by like 2% of people. It's because, again, you have to be a certain type of person to really enjoy it and get the most out of it. So that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, comment, all that. It helps me out. And I'll see you guys next time.